Thanks everyone for joining us for this 10th anniversary panel of LEGO Ideas. We've got a great panel for you today, so I'll start off with some introductions here real quick. If you don't know who I am, my name is Joshua Hanlon. I help run the Beyond the Brick YouTube channel, travel around the world, and ask LEGO fans questions. So today I'll be doing that with these three fans here. So that's just a short introduction about me, but then if we want to start down and then move down the line.
Hi, I'm Nick, a designer for LEGO, and I worked on the LEGO Voltron model, and before I did some stuff for the Adventure Time set as well. So I've got a little bit of history in LEGO Ideas.
Cool, I'm Tim Courtney, and now Experience Manager for LEGO Ideas. That's the online experience, that's the fans' journey through the program. Been with the project since LEGO Kuso went from the Japanese version to the English version back in 2011, so a little shy of 7 years. And I'm also a member of the community for some time.
Good thing sometime, yes. I know. Yes, and I'm Diva, and I have this fancy title, it says Head of LEGO Ideas. So I work with Tim and some other people from our team, overseeing both the experience, but also the part when we take the ideas into the whole kind of value chain and they become the official LEGO product. So I've been with the team for around the same time as Tim, 7-8 years. Yes.
There we go. So thank you. So that's some great introductions there. As they mentioned, we've got a lot of years of experience here on the panel. So we'll definitely be diving into the history over the past 10 years of LEGO Kuso and then LEGO Ideas and kind of how that's changed over the years. But before we started in on that, I wanted to ask you about the kind of most recent news regarding LEGO Ideas, and that's the combination of ideas with LEGO Rebrick. And so if you want to touch on that and talk about how combining that together is going to be, changing LEGO Ideas and what that will look like in the future.
Yeah, great. So as many of you are familiar with LEGO Rebrick, back when we started LEGO Rebrick, it was a sort of a social bookmarking site where you could link to different models around the world, or on different websites, and have a central place to link out. And what we found is that when we started running contests on LEGO Rebrick, those were really, really popular. And that was the LEGO Rebrick that we launched in, I think it was 2016. And we ran for a couple of years of contests there. But really, we found that it made a lot more sense to put that under one roof and evolve the way that people think about what LEGO Ideas is and what sharing ideas with the LEGO group is. It's about product ideas, but it's also about the great creative models that people can create when they're given a certain design brief to say, what was the Voltron scene that we've had, or the gift with purchase space model, right? So really, it's about saying we're evolving what people think of in terms of what you can do. Sharing your ideas with the LEGO group, and ways that we can reward you and participate together. We think that'll go further in a combined experience. So that's what we've done this year, and we're really looking forward to hosting many contests on there, as well as continuing allowing and encouraging you to submit ideas for LEGO products.
Mm-hmm. So you're maintaining that core of what LEGO Ideas is, while just adding all these great new features from Rebrick, like the contests and things that people will be able to participate in the future.
Yeah, absolutely, and that way I think the site's going to get a lot more active. There's a lot more to do, and the feedback loop on contests is actually a lot shorter than with product ideas. If you think about it, we have our review, and then there's some more time and an announcement, and there's some more time, and then there's a product on the shelf. This keeps things a lot more fresh, and we can see where that takes us as well.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So we'll definitely be looking forward to seeing kind of how that plays out in the future. I'm sure all the fans in the room will keep a close eye on that. So that's really exciting to hear that you're continuing to adapt the platform. But then, as I mentioned earlier, we definitely want to look back over the past 10 years as well, and kind of look back to the beginning days of Kuso. So I know some of the fans here who might have been AFOLs for a long time probably will remember when it first started, but a lot of people, maybe more around my age, that didn't remember those early days might not remember that. So take us through kind of the first year or two, kind of when Kuso first started in Japan, kind of why LEGO decided to start it just in Japan, and what kind of the goal of that was at the beginning.
Right, so maybe I'll try that. So it actually started back in 2008, and that was one of the projects that we did because Lego Company, we kind of looked at what are the new opportunities, what are the new ventures that we can onboard, and we looked at different partners, and that's how we found our partner in Japan. And they had this amazing site called Kuso. And the Kuso in Japanese means something about like, I wish for something. That's my wish for something. And then you can wish for anything, and then you place your product idea, and there could be Lego or anything else. And then the company helps you to realize that. So we made the partnership with them, and we had like a special dedicated sort of Lego site, Lego Kuso page, where the people could then submit Lego ideas. And that was our experiment, because there was like, okay, we need to try and see how it goes. Maybe it wouldn't fly, maybe it would. So it's all was Japanese. In the beginning, it was all Japanese. And yes, and it took about 2 to 3 years. And we tested it out in Japan, of course. And the first sets that came out of that were based on the Japanese submarine and the space station. So that's how it all started.
Mm-hmm. There you go. So it was just kind of testing and figuring things out. What were some of the challenges then that Lego kind of was trying to figure out how to overcome with that? Because obviously you were opening this up to just anyone to vote for whatever they thought would be a cool set, and maybe that wouldn't meld well with what Lego wanted to actually create. So things like that, and then also having to go on and actually create those sets themselves. So what were some of those challenges that were trying to be kind of overcome in the early years?
Sorry. So, well, there was an experiment. So we wanted really to see, like, how can we embrace this co-creation idea that we allow our true fans to actually create together with us. Sorry, I need some water, maybe. So, and that was experiment. So we actually also try to figure out, like, how do we validate the designs? Like, how many votes do you need to gather? Like, who would like that? So the first year it was that. Sorry, can you take some water? I think the threshold was 1,000 votes in Japan, and that was like testing out. And I think most of the models that we have, they were pretty good. And we tried then to sort of find out like what are the most popular ones, then we can try to realize. So having 1,000 votes, it not necessarily means that only 1,000 people like that. Mm-hmm. So one of our challenges was like, okay, so how many do we produce? Do we produce only 1,000? Do we produce 2, 3, 5, 10? And what would happen if we produce 10 and nobody gonna buy? So it's managing expectations and sort of and how we bring to market. There was like the whole journey that we used for 2 years to actually, to prune it before it became international site.
Mm-hmm. So then, obviously, after 2 years, you launched it internationally, and that opened it up to the entire world, which certainly, I'm sure, brought in a whole new series of issues and things that had to be overcome, as everyone in the world can now start voting on these ideas and submitting ideas and voting as well. So you get a ton more ideas coming in and a ton more votes. So what was that process like as you started to open it up to the entire world and get all of these new ideas coming in?
Maybe we can share that, Tim and I, so we've been on the journey now together there, and I know it was kind of really thinking about, okay, now that we go internationally, of course, then the language is English, and then also how do we scale it? So from 1,000 votes going internationally, so that was also one of the tasks for us to figure out, okay, so is it going to be like, what is the relevant thresholds of votes that we support, that we need to think about? And based on the experience from Kuso, then we said like, okay, we should try the 10,000. And then it actually worked out pretty well. So we still have the 10,000 as the threshold to actually take into the next stage. So, and then also again, planning the whole kind of value chain. How then we take the design created by a fan and then work with our design team to really mature the design so it becomes the official Lego product, because there are different things that we need to tweak, and Nick can tell that some time to really make the Lego experience that we can stand in for. So these were the processes, and then within kind of building the experience, you can add, Tim, to how we also evolved the site when it actually became international better.
Yeah, so when we went to an international site, actually there were very few parameters for what it is that we invited people to submit. If I'm remembering correctly, the word kuso in Japanese is kind of like something like a wish, like to wish something into existence. So we prompted people with, what is your Lego wish? And in the beginning, because again, we were just validating the concept, it was pretty much open to any sort of idea around the Lego brand. So we had backpacks, and we had candles and outlet system, power system, and all these kind of very divergent. Because it was based in Japan, we had a lot of Japanese cultural artifacts, markers of like national pride. For example, we have the Shinkai, we have the Hayabusa. Then there was that Japanese architecture set. I don't know who here has seen that on display in the Lego house in a former 10K model. So we had things like that. When we went international, and that was right about the time that I joined, and we started, Lego Minecraft was coming up, as well as the Back to the Future car. DeLorean got some early traction in media outside of Lego fan media. And really it was, well, that's why we have the vote threshold, is it can be as open as possible, and then if it gets the votes, then we'll validate it. And I think that worked pretty well for a couple of years in the early years. And then we realized that some of the types of concepts that would come up repeatedly would run into complexities when we're evaluating how do we actually realize that as a product. And so that began a several-year period of really thinking long and hard about what sort of guidelines or parameters, I guess if when we're a professional designer, you might call that the design brief. So only using existing Lego elements was really important, so that one, speed to market, and two, the business case, for the model. That's why we had to put a restriction like that. Also, it's something where it's really only possible in the time frame that everyone expects to deliver a single SKU, so a single product, and not a play theme. So for those of you who may have been following Lego ideas for a long time, you might remember ideas for new elements. You might remember ideas for play themes, or even extended line type concepts or software or things. And so over the years, we pruned it back. But I want to say that we left it as open as possible for as long as possible until we really knew the business couldn't take in those types of things within this frame. And so then by doing that, we want to set people up, for more success or for less disappointment, by guiding them a little bit, on the front end as far as so that's another key thing we learned is, what is the scope, what's the breadth of what we're realistically able to commercialize as a set.
Mm-hmm. And that touches on something else that I wanted to ask you about as well. So you mentioned like Minecraft, and that's one of the designs that's come through Lego Ideas that then spawned several more sets in the future, and lines and themes and everything now that we have up to today from Lego Minecraft. So what's the decision process like on that, as far as when you see a set, and how do you decide, okay, this is something we could continue with over the years and continue to make more sets based on this idea?
So usually what we say, all the sets that come from Lego Ideas, we call them hot singles because they're really cool and they're really hot. So they're very unique because each design is like totally awesome. So and we want to keep this way because there's something very special. So and sometimes some of those hot singles, they are so hot that we then say like, okay, we could do additions to the one. And that's how the Minecraft assortment came about, because it just grew on us. It just grew, and then of course then the appeal of that was like very broad, and allows us to make assortment. And then we also made a couple more the Ghostbusters sets, because that was also the huge property. But not all of them, sort of have another, so say, brother or sister to add to the first hot single, because they are unique by that set. So so the formula is to keep to one, but sometimes could be more.
You never know, just depending on what the reaction is
Yeah,
like
exactly,
to it.
exactly.
So we've mentioned a number of these sets that have been based on intellectual properties, and that's kind of a big part of LEGO Ideas. Is these obviously fan designs that get a lot of votes. It helps if they're based on something that already has a big fan base. So Nick, you just worked on the Voltron set. So that's obviously based on an intellectual property. So kind of what's that process like for you, kind of working on something that already has this big existing fan base out there, and then trying to make this set based on both the fan design and then something that LEGO can sell?
Well, it's to start with, it's pretty daunting because there's like there's a huge following for it, because you come from a fan background as well. It's like you understand the expectations from both the fans of the intellectual property and the fans of LEGO, and the fans of sometimes even the fan builder has their own fans. In my case, Lendy has a pretty big following, and I know they really like his work. In fact, I was familiar with his work even before I started working here, so it's kind of like there's a lot of pressure from that side. So normally you have a bunch of different check-ins and a bunch of different stakeholder meetings that you have, and you have an IP partner. Like when you work for superheroes, you have an IP partner check-in, and now we also have Skype meetings with the fan designer, where you go through the design, you reiterate on some of the design decisions made in the model. So it adds an additional amount of feedback loops and back and forth. Specifically with an IP, you'd have an official approval and official comments. But then what you said. For me personally, I was often those meetings are important, right? Because they're actually green lighting things. But in the back of my mind, it was most of the time just thinking about how's the fan designer gonna respond to this, and how are the fans going to respond to the changes that we make to the model. So it's adds for me an additional layer of a little bit of nerves. That may be because I'm a little bit of a nervous person, but it's both unnerving, but also in some cases when you check in, I have within the company I kind of accumulated my own group of people that I used for having feedback on a short-term basis. So just drop by somebody. There's this guy called Don Meadows. He works for Digital Games, and he's a big Voltron fan. So I would occasionally drop by his desk and say, hey, what do you think about this? So all these different factors and all these different ways of getting it in there, it adds extra nerves, but also there's a certain it's humbling because at the end of the day you are trusted with this intellectual property that LEGO hasn't touched before yet, and it is your job to basically knock it out of the park for the first one, so that maybe something like Minecraft can happen and we can do it again. So don't know if that answered your question.
No, it definitely kind of adds that extra weight of responsibility to you as the LEGO designer that's going to be making the final product that people are actually going to be buying.
And Ideas already has that so clearly because we have so many additional stakeholders. In fact, we have 10,000 plus one, but of course the fan designer. If he didn't vote for his own project, can you vote for your own project? I've never had my own project, so I wouldn't know. Can you vote for your own project?
Can. Yeah.
Okay, good.
You take all the votes you can get.
Yeah, one person, one vote.
Yeah, only one.
Yeah, that's great then. So then, obviously, as you mentioned, you kind of keep in mind very much the original fan design and keep thinking, what would the fan designer think of this change? So what's that process like for you working with are you talking with the fan designer throughout your design process as well?
Yes, yeah. I mean, we, I think especially for IP related things, where we have the original blueprints to go back to, very much like with the Saturn V rocket, where there's an IP partner to satisfy, and we need to make sure it's as close as possible. For Voltron, there was a lot of stability things going on, and that was one of the main hurdles that we had. Sorry, what was this question again? I immediately derailed it.
Are you working with the fan designer throughout the process as well?
So the way that we looped that back in was basically, I thought the most important thing about this project was the vision of having a giant robot. Because cool thing about super robots is they're massive, right? They're huge.
That's what makes them so cool.
So even though at the main, while we were developing the big 18-inch Voltron, I was tasked to create a smaller one as well, in case the big one would fall through with the quality restrictions that we had. But for me personally, I felt more like motivated to work on the big one and make that original vision work. Because if we were going to shrink it down that much, it wouldn't be like, for me, fitting the original vision anymore. So for me, I really tried to early on, because before we even announce it and before we even officially contact the fan designer, we need to make sure this thing is feasible, like from the ground up, like just base level. Can we make this as a product that as a company we can get behind, and something we can put on our shelves and we know that people can build and people can display for a pretty long amount of time on the shelf, and then even play with it afterwards again. So all those restrictions, you can't, like with a normal play theme or like a normal product, you can continue working on this and work on this and work on this and cancel it about 8 months before we put it on shelves, right? Because that's when we lock everything. But in this case, we make the announcement and we make the commitment to our fans and to the people that supported this project. And you can't pull out at that point. You can't be like, hey guys, we're making Voltron, and then a year later you're like, never mind.
Fans don't appreciate that.
Yeah, exactly. So actually, when the announcement was made, we've been working on that product for 8 to 9 months. I'm trying to make it like a real thing. And we contacted a fan designer, of course, a little while before that, so they could be informed about this. And once that was all looped in, I went back to with him and took a look at the design features. So for Voltron, the stability was just something we couldn't we couldn't start breaking down the structure that we created over those 9 months. So most of the things that I worked with Lendy on are the designs of the line faces and the different kind of like design details, and trying to go back and forth. He himself actually iterates a lot on his design, which I followed closely on his like updates on his ideas page, where his faces of the lines became better and better and better. And I think the last version that he uploaded is actually relatively close to the product one, which I was very like excited by, because you could see it like a real like individual design like details that were very close. And I think that that was quite pleasing for me, because we had to re-engineer the structure so heavily that I really wanted to make sure that we still captured both the vision for the set, so big robot, and then he's very particular about his details, so I really want to make sure that the details matched some of his personal work.
So you maintain that balance there of both the large, cool robot while also having all the cool details within the larger build. And so having watched you do like interviews over the past few months about Voltron, I can tell you're a big Voltron fan yourself as well.
Yes.
So is this something that Lego designers kind of keep an eye on the ideas projects, and they're like, this is something I would love to work on. I want to try to get in on this. Is that something designers do?
Yes, very much so. And it's in my case, it was very funny, because I started working on it under Sam. He couldn't be here today because he's got kids. But basically, he and I were talking about it, because I hung out in the Next Knights area for a while, because I was a concept designer for Next Knights, among other projects. And we were always talking about wanting to do the Voltron robot. And everybody was always saying, you can't do it. It's impossible. You can't do it. I mean, even, is he here? Jamie? Is he here? Jamie isn't here. Jamie was, we were looking at it with Jamie, and Jamie's like, I don't think we can do this. And I was like,
Every time someone told you that, it was just a bigger challenge.
Yes, but basically, yeah, that's like the thing for me is like, I really wanted to do this because it's so unique and so unlike anything we've ever done before. So Sam actually picked it up because he was in a position where he could do that. I was an intern back then, and basically he picked it up after working on Doctor Who. He had like close relations with the ideas team, so he knew some people, and they said, if you can build a version that's like good enough, we can produce it. So he then roped me into it. He's like, if you have spare time left. Boy, did I, because I was pretty excited about this. So
You'll make time for this.
Exactly. So we worked on it together for a while, and then he stepped up into the creative lead role and gave me full control over the project, which was a little bit scary for me, but I knew I was up for the challenge, because I've been working with him on it with him on the set for like quite a while at that point. But basically, yeah, if you, like, designers all keep an eye on Lego ideas, and whenever something comes up that they're excited about, it's like, we need to make this. Like, I like going back to the rocket, because Carl and Mike are both, like, very, very excited about that set, and they were, as soon as that got anywhere, they were like, we need to make this, we need to make this. And managers are, of course, very, like, careful with their resources, because last thing you want to do is have your designer be off somewhere else doing something you don't want to
Right,
work
just a
on.
side passion project.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of like clearing that needs to happen with everybody, but especially in the early stages, I just worked a lot together with Sam on it in my some of my spare time, and then occasionally my boss would be like, all right, you get to work this week on this project, and I was like, oh boy, let's go. So it's a really interesting project because people are drafted directly into it based on their passion.
Yeah, so that's a great insight then into kind of the details of how one of these projects actually becomes a set. But I'm going to step back again now and kind of look more at the marketing aspect of ideas, because obviously you've got these fan designers involved and these intellectual properties and everything. So there's going to be some unique facets there. So once a set reaches 10,000 votes, you've got 10,000 people that have voted for it and said, yeah, I'd be interested in buying this. But what further research is done there to make sure this is something that would actually be viable for Lego to produce?
So so then every 10K set, it goes to official review, and we have set up a process that we take through several stages, because and they are very similar process as if we have developed our own assortments. So in the initial stages, then we involve our design team, the design team, then our brand team, then our partnership team, then our games team, and there are a lot of people sort of really say, okay, how does that? Is it viable? Then, as Nick said, can we get the license if it's based on the property that we don't own? Does it fit Lego values? Does it something that we would do as the Lego group? Because there are some of the sets that are cool, but not necessarily within the frame of what the Lego brand stands for. So that's the initial sort of stage. Then after that, then we would also need to make sure that, okay, so this looks really good, but can we really sort of put it on the market? So would there be people who would buy? And of course, there is a good chance that the 10,000 would buy who have voted. But then usually we would look also could that be also something that appeal, beyond the 10,000? So we will also then see production complexity, as Tim was then saying, can we do that without adding new elements and making new molds? Can it be done within our range of the parts and that we have? So so that's basically how we do that. And the part of the sort of journey is also that if you really want to involve the fan creator in the whole story. And sometimes some of the creative people, they are a little bit shy, so not all of them really want to get onto the stage and to say, hey, this is what I've done or how it came about. But it's our really wish to make it really co-create, as Nick was, together, but also tell the story. Why the set was made by the girl or the guy, because that's actually part of the big story that we want to tell.
Mm-hmm. So you try to bring the fan designer also to the forefront somewhat, and bring them out and kind of pull the story out there as well, and say, here's kind of the inspiration behind this idea. Here's why I wanted to submit this to ideas and make it a set.
Exactly. So there are some so wonderful stories. Just if you remember some of idea sets, there are some here. It's called Lego Birds. There was a guy from the UK who is the gardener, and then he said one day I was just dreaming while doing the garden, and then this bird came out and then landed on my shovel, and then it's wow, I really love them, and then somehow connected to his sort of passion for Lego, and then he started to make those birds out of Lego. So and then you see Wall-E. We have one of the great animators at Pixar, who is also the big Lego fan. So he also does a lot of his sort of creations with the Lego brick, and that's another interesting story. So every set comes with a story that is worth telling, and that's really exciting for us.
Mm-hmm. And to go along with that, because you have that unique story and everything with the fan designer, are idea sets treated differently at all when it comes to the design process of, say, creating new parts for a set or things like that, rather than versus just the average theme, like a city theme or something like that? Is there any way that that's treated differently throughout the design process when it comes to making a new part or something?
Yeah, so I mean, like, as both Nick and Tim said, like, we don't aim to make any new parts. And that's because we believe also that the creativity can be, there are so many parts. So that's a challenge, and maybe that's a part of the challenge. So we can make, what can you make with all that you get, right? And then the other thing is like speed to market, because making a new mold, it takes time. So they will take another year or half a year or so for the final model to reach the market, which is then probably also too long time to wait to get it realized. So that's part of the challenge, and which is the different maybe from other lines, that we don't aim to make new parts.
No, that totally makes sense.
But I mean, we do aim. They are treated differently in the sense that we integrate the fan's story into the process and into the communication. So everything you see in the Lego assortment follows a standard development process. That's a very much a waterfall process. That's several stages, and then we have an assortment on the shelves, and there's pre-planned marketing, and everything is it's tailored to the theme, but it's not really telling a lot of the story behind. Maybe the creator is, or Technic is, creator expert. What we aim to do is really bring the fan designer along for the journey and celebrate their contribution. So you see the building instructions. Now we've been doing the signing events, where possible. We've been doing some additional video content, creative things like that. So I think that's where they're given that extra treatment. Not necessarily in the design process, though it is special and there are loops with the fan designer, but we're not, as we've all said, we're not doing anything new part-wise, but we are from a marketing story perspective.
Yeah, and then maybe just to add, because the reason why we have ideas is it's also, that's the main reason why we have it, to actually allow and, to have this place and this platform where all the creative ideas that you guys have, we have seen plenty of those here, that also can sort of reach the company, and then together with you we can then realize some of them. So that's the overall reason why we have the ideas. And that's sort of why, and that's why the idea behind each of the set that is created by any person, it's very, very important part of that journey through the whole process.
For sure. So, as I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of years of experience between the three of you here with Lego ideas and being Lego fans. So, as over the years, as you've seen projects kind of come and go on ideas, some fail, some are successful. What are some things, the kind of mistakes that you noticed that you would kind of give advice to people to avoid when submitting Lego ideas projects or trying to kind of get the word out there? Some things that you noticed over the years that if you had to give some tips to someone out there who maybe, I'm sure there's some people in the crowd right now that have projects on ideas that you would say would help them kind of achieve that 10,000 votes.
I'll start, and that is, I think the guidelines that we put out there really are your friend. They're really meant to help shave off, the kinds of things that really veer outside of the scope of what we can make. And as those have evolved over the years, it's basically, it's from our experience evaluating your ideas, either, when they're just submitted and gaining traction, but also, what's more likely to be selected in a review. But that being said, there's no sort of magic bullet to succeed and be selected. I think that every submission, even if it's qualified at 10,000 votes, it's unique. It exists in a unique point in time, a unique context inside the company with our own pipeline, a unique context outside with everything that's happening, in entertainment or in the toy industry, as a whole. So maybe why something, doesn't make it through at one point in time isn't why something would or wouldn't make it through later. So that's one of the main reasons why, for example, we don't specify, why things don't get made, is because there isn't a formula. And if we guide you one way, it's not necessarily going to, come out with a better result for you. From a model design perspective, one thing is you could look at the models that we've already made, and the commonality between them is I think the standards to which they're built, and maybe Nick, you can talk more about that.
Yeah, I think Tim pretty much hit it on the head. Also, a lot of the answers that work for his direction also kind of work for the model direction. So if I was just trying to be super, like, trying to give you the hot tips on how to get your product made.
Please do.
Normally, I would say something along the lines of stability, but then that thing happened. So again, it's like very much a case-by-case basis. In the end of the day, what's I think most important is find something that is unique and find something that we don't offer. Find something that
Exactly.
will wow people both inside and outside of the company. Because if it is truly like nobody, not like let me say it this way, a lot of people don't actually know about Voltron. Like the main reason why we could make Voltron work is because it's such an overwhelmingly amazing model. Like when you put a giant robot that combines it of 5 smaller lion robots onto the table for anyone, nobody's gonna say like, this is kind of lame, isn't it? Like, make something that's absolutely like blowing people away. Like either with the model or with its message or with the story that it tells. Find something that is unique and find something that you think could absolutely blow people away. That's for me. Because in that case, we will make it work, even if it's a giant super robot that can't stand on its legs. We will find a way to make it work, basically, even if it takes us a little bit longer.
Yeah.
I think you just put it very nicely, Nick. You know, just like we always look for something new and unique. So, and that's basically what makes it all the way through.
Stop using finger hinges. No more finger hinges. I don't want any more finger hinges in LEGO Idea Submission. I'm joking. We'll work around it. Voltron had finger hinges. We worked around it.
You can figure those things out.
Yes.
So, and again, with your years of experience, I'd be interested to hear. So there's the exhibit in the Lego house right now of all of the sets that reach 10,000, or a lot of the sets that reach 10,000 votes, but were not actually made into an official Lego set. And it was really interesting to walk around the Lego house, that exhibit, and kind of check those out. So if we just go down the line here, what would be one kind of idea that you thought would be a great set you would like to see turn into a set, but for whatever reason just couldn't make it?
Can I give 2?
Sure. Why not?
So the first one is mostly quite funny because it's the Iron Giant, because I love giant robots, obviously.
There's a trend here.
But the Iron Giant was in review while I was basically like in the hot seat for Voltron. Like we're just like, I would like to do this, but I don't know if I can do Voltron yet. And the Iron Giant actually has much thinner joints. I looked at it. I'd spent an afternoon trying to see if I could do anything at that scale, and it's like, this is very spindly. Like it's that like retro future design style, right? And I think I would love to do it, but I'm not sure if it would have been possible from a like physical point of view. Again, maybe scale it down, but then trying to match the fans' like vision for the product is harder at that point. So I would love to do Iron Giant. That would have been great for me, but for a variety of reasons. Obviously it didn't happen. I don't know those reasons because I'm just a design resource, so I've just been thinking about it myself. And then the other one, I really love the Portal project. I think that was actually made by a close friend of mine before he started working for the company. Before I started working in the company. In fact, he worked there for 2 years before I even started working here. And that project just I really like the IP, the intellectual property, and I love the way the things were built. Like even if it wasn't like, if I didn't care about Portal, there's a lot of like interesting build techniques used, and it was a interesting proposition too. Their whole campaign was quite well put together.
I'm a huge fan of airplanes. So actually, one of my favorite models that didn't make it, that I really wish that I could have had for myself, was the DC-3 by Sorg. That was the one that I was really going for. Sorry?
It's a real big one.
It's really big. It's really beautiful. And there's a creation in the back, I think, of I can't remember which hall it is, but it's somebody who collaborated with him and built an upgraded version of that model. So I finally yesterday got to see the model in person. So if I guess the person's not in the room who built it, but there is one against the back wall. That's that DC-3. I just love it. It's a beautiful model.
Good. So you can see like everybody has his own personal passion. So that's actually what it reflects. So I really like the did the dinos. There were quite a few projects that I had like this size built dinosaurs, and they were very organic and they're beautiful. So I really like those. And then there's my favorite is done by Lego artist called Nathan Savaya. It's called the little yellow, because that talks to you in the different ways. So, but as you can see, so there are plenty of different models, and then we each have like our own passion to what could be interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then I think a final question here before we'll open it up to a few questions from the audience here as well is then your favorite idea set that actually was able to go on and become a set that you can actually own now and display in your house. Maybe one that you did not work on.
Saturn V.
Okay.
I don't, and it's weird because I don't care about like I'm all about fantasy and like sci-fi stuff. So normal space flight is a little bit boring when you could have a robot flying through space, right? But the way that set is built is incredible, and the building experience of that set is something that isn't going to come along around like another time soon. I think it's such a like incredible building experience.
Mm-hmm.
I have a few, and it's my real favorite is the one that I worked on, but and that was the Minecraft set because it's just near and dear to my heart. But I know I'm not allowed to say that, so sorry. The exosuit, being a classic space fan, I think that's really awesome that we were able to do it, but also that Mark and Peter worked together to get the green classic space fig that really fills out the color palette. So in addition to being a really awesome mech robot thing, I don't know what the proper term is, I'm not in the genre.
It's a mech. If there's a pilot and it's a mech.
If there's a pilot and it's a mech, if it's okay, got it.
These are important details.
Yes. In addition to that, just the green classic space figs. I absolutely love that. But the Saturn V was like the best building experience I've had in a very long time. I love that model.
Yeah, and also it's for me it feels like you ask me to prioritize among my kids. So it's very difficult, and so but just to note quite a few. So I think ship in the bottle, that's something that probably nobody sort of expect coming, and it still amazes. So it's kind of point of the talk of the town still. It's wonderful how you can actually use the Lego building system for that, and then I love the Yellow Submarine. Just because maybe the Beatles.
There you go. Good answers. Excellent sets. So now we'll open it up then to some audience questions, because I wanted to make sure anyone who's maybe had some things come up as the panelists have been talking here, something that you had further questions on. So if you just want to raise your hands, we can call on a few people. We've got a few minutes left here. Yeah.
How do you make a match between the correct designer and the original idea?
Well, and maybe as Nick said, because designers they sign in themselves for those who are really passionate about.
Especially early on, it's mostly just somebody staying late one night and just building a model and saying, "Hey, I'm passionate about this. Can we make this work?" And often they'll find a way to do it.
Yeah, they find us.
And that's really the best.
Like it's a really like a lot of designers want to work on these products because they're so high end and they're so you can do some pretty crazy things like in a Saturn V or like in Voltron. We can do some really insane building techniques, and a lot of designers have like all these crazy ideas in their brain that they'd love to put somewhere.
So does it mean you have a bit more liberty than other departments in terms of the designing construction?
Yes, well, we have like higher age like some of the highest age marks that we have, right? So that the building instruction difficulty is entirely based on the age mark on the box. So Voltron was initially going to be a 14 plus, and then I made it 16 plus because there was a little bit of crazy nonsense going on the inside. So.
Are there any examples of people being recruited by the Lego group based on submitting ideas to Lego ideas? So can you use it as a recruitment platform?
So Nick Vass, he made the Portal project together with Team Jigsaw, I think. Yeah. And while that was about to reach 10,000, he was actually in a workshop as well. So I'm sure he used it in his portfolio. It's no replacement for a portfolio, but I'm not saying it will look bad in your portfolio, basically.
I don't think we're proactively looking, but I think now we have three. I think we have three designers.
Junior.
4, yeah. Yeah, and then we have Neek. We have
All right, but I never had an ideas project.
no, okay, Nico.
I was just a fan designer. Oh yeah, Nico. Yeah, that's right.
Nico.
Sorry,
I
we
get-
hang
I
out a
get
lot,
those
and
two
we have
nicknames
Nico
confused.
and Neek,
And we
that's quite
have
confusing.
Ricardo, and we have Wes.
Yes,
Wes
that's right.
Talbot on one of the Zelda projects, and Ricardo, who did a lot of fantasy stuff. So it's kind of cool to get an email in the system. Hey Tim, I work at the company now. You know, they had been active participants, and they had also gone through the recruitment.
So are there any other industries or companies that do anything similar that you look at how they work with fans to make things? I can't think of anything.
It's hard to find a direct analog because we're a company that has a lot of standardized components, and you combine them in many different ways to create a product. There are companies that work on crowdsourcing of product ideas or games. Starbucks has a feedback community, but a lot of those things are, hey, here's a creative brief, and we'd like you to feedback to the brief, more like a rubric contest.
Yeah.
I have, occasionally we run into companies that want to learn from our experience, but at the same time, it's not a direct one-to-one. I just think it's because of the unique nature of our products.
Yeah, the building system.
And also like the people that use it. So the people that are interested in our products, and it's a creative medium by itself. It's like if a company that sells paint would also sell paintings, basically. I think paintings made by fans from fans of paint brand, basically. I'm trying to really make an analogy of this, but
AFOPs.
like you can't take creativity out of our product. Like it's meant to be taken apart, and it's meant to be rebuilt into your own idea, and that's why ideas.
And with that, we've sadly run out of time today, so let's give a round of applause for the panelists.